This week in the Boardroom, brought to you by NYSE Governance Services, Corporate Board Member, along with Governance Knowledge Partners, the Center for Audit Quality, and Grant Thornton, and contributing partners, National Investor Relations Institute, and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.
Welcome to this edition of This Week in the Boardroom. I'm TK Kerstetter, Chairman of the NYSE Governance Services. And today we're going to be talking about effective disclosure and what boards should know and monitor. And joining me is a familiar face. I'd like to welcome Cindy Fornelli, who's the Executive Director of the Center of Audit Quality. And Cindy, welcome.
Thank you, TK. It's great to be here.
Yeah, here is a new setting. We've been in the old studio, we've been in the new studio, and now here we are on the floor for a one-time TWIB, and it's sort of special, isn't it?
It is. It's great to be here. The energy is exciting, and I'm pleased to be here for this special taping.
It is a special taping, but once again, we find ourselves discussing disclosure.
Yes,
and
we are.
That's because it's been in the news again. It's been in the news with the SEC. So before we start with some specific questions, why don't you sort of give an update on the environment and sort of why this is back in focus again?
Sure. So as everybody probably knows, the SEC has announced a while ago that they were going to do a project on looking at the disclosures, not only financial disclosures, but all corporate disclosures under the 1933 and 1934 Acts. So really all the disclosures that a public company listed in the United States has to make. And it's more recently in the news lately because I think there's been a renewed effort by the SEC to get this project up and running. And so it's interesting because when you hear people talk about it now, currently, there's some confusion about, is this disclosure simplification? What exactly is the SEC trying to do? And so I think as we talk about what it means for boards of directors and others, which I know we're going to get to here in a moment, it's important to understand that I think what Chair White is trying to do at the SEC is in some areas you're going to see more disclosure, and in other areas you might see less disclosure. So it's really a misnomer to call it simplification or talk about overload. I think she really wants to look at the entire disclosure regime and right-size it to see what works in today's environment.
So I understand it's back in focus, but why? What does it mean for directors, and why should they be following this issue?
Well, I think what's really important for directors to know is that, however long the process is going to take the SEC to work through, and I'm anticipating that they'll have concept releases and opportunities for stakeholders to weigh in. And so it'd be important for boards of directors to watch that and to weigh in the appropriate venue. There might be round tables. I think there's going to be a whole host of opportunities to weigh in. But currently, right now, the SEC has called, and this is being run by Keith Higgins out of the Division of Corporation Finance, to voluntarily adopt some of these ideas that are out there right now. So such as looking at your disclosures and seeing where there's redundancies, seeing where it's repetitive, seeing if there's areas where it can be more streamlined or talked about in better plain English, if you will. And so that's a call that the SEC has out right now to companies. And I think boards of directors are going to start hearing about this now because I think their general counsel, their corporate secretaries, their disclosure teams are going to be wanting to look at their disclosures and see what changes can be made now before the SEC acts. So I'm going to guess that in the coming months they're going to be hearing about this from their teams, their disclosure teams.
So you referenced to me beforehand that it's not just the SEC that's working on this. So who else is sort of involved in this disclosure uptick?
Well, the SEC certainly initiated this project and got everybody talking about it, but as you might imagine, a variety of groups are focused on this right now. You've got, for instance, the American Bar Association, the Business Roundtable, the Society of Corporate Secretaries, And most recently, you've had the Chamber of Commerce. In fact, just recently, they had an event at the Chamber where they brought together corporate secretaries and former SEC commissioners and investors to talk about what this might look like. And in fact, they just came out with a paper that talks about what some of the issues might be. And I think they did a good job of identifying the issues. And one of the issues is, when these rules were written, there was paper delivery of the proxy and the disclosure documents. And who reads a paper prospectus these days, right? It's all done electronically, or for the most part, it's done electronically. And the rules and regulations don't really anticipate that. So in addition to looking at the actual disclosures, I think you're going to see the SEC and others focus on what's the right delivery mechanism, which could be exciting.
Yeah. Well, disclosure is also the space for the CAQ, for the Center for Audit Quality.
Certainly on the financial statement disclosures,
So what are you
yes.
guys, this touches your world as well, so what programs are you guys involved in?
It does, and we're very actively monitoring this and engaging in dialogue. But the one thing I want to tell the viewers about that's really exciting is we have an ongoing project right now with George Washington University, and it is bringing together a group of MBA students over the summer. This is a class. They're getting college credit or MBA credit toward this, and they're working in teams of 2, and they're focused on the 10K and looking at, basically the assignment to them was, assume you just inherited $50,000, and the only stipulation is you have to invest it in a US publicly traded company. What information do you want to know before you make that investment decision? So, clean sheet of paper, not encumbered by current laws and regulations. What do they think the most important things are that an investor would need to know before investing in a company? And so it's pretty exciting. We've got a great advisory panel that's comprised of former SEC, there's a former SEC chairman on there. We've got former SEC commissioners, we've got former heads of the Division of Corporation Finance, we've got investors, we've got preparers, audit committee chairs, all on an advisory panel, helping the students work through it. And then it's going to be a judged competition with a winner. That's going to happen here in September. And then we'll put all of the ideas together in a report and submit it to the SEC so that the SEC can benefit from the thinking of the students. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a rare opportunity for any student that's been lucky enough to be in that.
Yeah, it's great. I just met with the students recently, and their ideas and their enthusiasm and the way they're approaching this is really fantastic.
Well, we can't sort of deal with this disclosure topic without us looking back on something that you and I did earlier, and that was when we looked at audit committees, you created a call for action.
That's right.
That you and I talked about. Tell me how that transpired, and it was a very big program when you launched it. I know it got a lot of publicity and a lot of reception from a lot of the companies.
Well, what's exciting about it is it continues to grow, and so more and more companies working with their disclosure teams. Now, this is on the audit committee report, so the call to action is specifically addressing the audit committee report and calling for audit committees to think about, is there more that the audit committee can say about the process and the way that they oversee the independent auditors? And we've had really good feedback. A lot of companies are now going through the process and adding this into their proxy statement. And in fact, we've got an ongoing project that I would love to come back and talk to you about when it's finished, in that we're researching every US public company's proxy statement and their audit committee report to see what kind of disclosures they are having. Are they increasing their disclosure about their oversight function of the independent auditors? And we'll create a benchmark so that year over year we can see the changes that happen in the audit committee report. It's interesting that this is separate from the disclosure effectiveness project that Mary Jo White at the SEC has going on, although she's very aware of this and has given a speech and said, this is a really important area, and this might be one of those areas where there's going to be more disclosure rather than less disclosure. So it's pretty exciting, but it's gratifying to see more and more audit committees and boards of directors disclosing more about the work that they do. Not that it asks for them to do any additional work, but just to describe more about the work that they currently do.
Well, I know the work at the center has been very helpful to companies and audit committees, so all I can tell you is sort of keep up the good work, and we will have you back because we want to hear about the final results of both those programs, so we'll look forward to that. And Cindy, thanks for joining me on the floor today.
Thanks, it's exciting, I appreciate it.
And that will conclude this edition of This Week in the Boardroom. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again next week when we take another look at a critical topic that'll help you be a board member or committee member. So we'll see you then.
Join us again next week for This Week in the Boardroom, brought to you by NYSE Governance Services Corporate Board Member, along with Governance Knowledge Partners, the Center for Audit Quality, and Grant Thornton. And contributing partners, National Investor Relations Institute and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.